Marie Antoinette was the last queen of France before the monarchy fell during the French Revolution. She was born as Maria Antonia Josepha Johanna on the 2nd of November 1755 in Vienna, Austria. She was the youngest daughter of Empress Maria Theresa and Emperor Francis I of the Holy Roman Empire. In 1770, at the age of 14, she married Louis Auguste, the heir to the French throne. When her husband became King Louis XVI in 1774, she became the Queen of France. As queen, Marie Antoinette quickly became a controversial figure. Many critics blamed her for France's growing financial problems and accused her of excessive spending. She was also the target of gossip and false stories that claimed she was unfaithful, had illegitimate children, and favored Austria over France. Her reputation was further damaged by the affair of the diamond necklace, in which she was wrongly accused of defrauding jewelers. During the French Revolution, people nicknamed her Madame Deficit, believing her luxury and resistance to reform worsened the country's crisis. When the revolution began, the royal family was forced to live under house arrest in the Tuileries Palace. Marie Antoinette's failed attempt to escape France in 1791 and her secret efforts to support Austria during the war only deepened public hatred toward her. After revolutionaries stormed the palace in August 1792, the royal family was imprisoned in the Temple Tower. That September, the monarchy was officially abolished and France became a republic. King Louis XVI was executed in January 1793. Marie Antoinette was tried in October the same year, found guilty of treason, and executed by guillotine on the 16th of October 1793. Marie Antoinette's early years were spent in the splendor of the Austrian court. She grew up in Vienna's Hofburg Palace as the 15th child of her parents. Her mother affectionately called her Little Madame Antoine. She shared a close bond with her sister Maria Carolina, who remained one of her dearest companions. Her education, however, was not very strong. By the age of 10, she still struggled to write properly in German or French, though she excelled in music and dance. With lessons from composer Christoph Willibald Gluck, she learned to sing and play the harp and harpsichord. She was known for her charm, grace, and love of dolls. When she was 7, she met the young Mozart, who was also a child prodigy. The death of her older sister Maria Josepha from smallpox deeply affected her, leaving a lasting emotional mark. Later, a French tutor named Mathieu Jacques de Vermont was sent to prepare her for life in France. He found her lively and kind-hearted, but also undisciplined and easily distracted. Before her marriage, French advisors helped her adapt to the refined manners of Versailles. Her teeth were straightened, her wardrobe modernized, and she was trained in the elegant walk and posture of the French court. By the time she left Austria, Maria Antonia had been transformed into a young woman ready to become Marie Antoinette, the future Queen of France. After the 7 Years' War, Empress Maria Theresa wanted to secure peace with France, which had long been Austria's rival. In 1770, she arranged a political marriage between her daughter Maria Antonia and the French heir Louis Auguste, grandson of King Louis XV. The goal was to strengthen the alliance between Austria and France. Maria Antonia officially gave up her rights to Austrian lands and married Louis Auguste by proxy in Vienna. She met her husband for the first time a month later at the edge of the forest of Compiègne. Upon arriving in France, she took the French name Marie Antoinette. Their official wedding took place at the Palace of Versailles on the 16th of May, 1770. followed by lavish celebrations. However, their marriage was not consummated for 7 years, which led to rumors and gossip that harmed their image at court. At first, the young Dauphine was admired for her beauty and charm, and the French people greeted her warmly when she appeared in public. Yet, some courtiers disliked her because of her Austrian origins and her connection to the Franco-Austrian alliance. One of her main enemies at court was Madame du Barry, the powerful mistress of King Louis XV. Influenced by her husband's aunts, Marie Antoinette refused to speak to du Barry, which created political tension. Eventually, under pressure from her mother and the Austrian ambassador, she agreed to greet du Barry briefly on New Year's Day in 1772, ending the conflict. When Louis XV died in 1774, Louis XVI When Louis XV died on the 10th of May, 1774, Louis XVI became king, and Marie Antoinette became Queen of France and Navarre. At first, she had little political influence over her husband, as key ministers like Maurepas and Vergennes limited her involvement. She did, however, play a role in the removal of the powerful Duc d'Aiguillon, one of the late king's ministers. Soon after becoming queen, Louis XVI gifted her the Petit Trianon, a small palace in the gardens of Versailles, where she could relax away from court life. She redesigned it according to her taste, leading to rumors that she decorated it with gold and jewels. As queen, Marie Antoinette developed a love for fashion and luxury. She spent vast sums of money on gowns, elaborate hairstyles, jewelry, and gambling, even as France was suffering from economic hardship. Her dressmaker, Rose Bertin, created extravagant gowns and towering hairstyles adorned with feathers and ribbons. These fashion choices made her a trendsetter, but also drew criticism from those who saw her as wasteful and out of touch with her people. The public began to associate her with extravagance, especially during the Flour War of 1775, when bread shortages and high prices caused riots. Many blamed her personally for France's worsening financial situation. Marie Antoinette's mother, Empress Maria Theresa, grew worried about her daughter's spending and warned her that her behavior was damaging her reputation. At court, Marie Antoinette surrounded herself with close friends and favorites. She became particularly close to the Princesse de Lamballe, who she appointed to a senior position in her household, and later to the Duchess of Polignac, who became her closest companion. She also supported artists and musicians, including her former teacher, the composer Christophe Willibald Gluck, who lived in France for several years under her patronage. During these early years as queen, Marie Antoinette enjoyed great popularity for her charm and youth, but her growing influence at court, her costly tastes, and her preference for private life at the Petit Trianon gradually began to turn public opinion against her. During a time filled with gossip and scandalous pamphlets, Emperor Joseph II of Austria, Marie Antoinette's brother, secretly visited France under the name Count Falkenstein. He stayed for 6 weeks, touring Paris and visiting Versailles. When he met the royal couple in April 1777, he spoke openly with King Louis XVI about the couple's unconsummated marriage. Joseph concluded that the problem was not physical, but rather a matter of inexperience and hesitation. In a private letter to his brother Leopold, he described Louis and Marie Antoinette as a pair of complete bunglers. He explained that Louis confessed his clumsy attempts at intimacy, showing that the issue was more psychological than medical. Following Joseph's advice, the marriage was finally consummated in August 1777. 8 months later, Marie Antoinette was confirmed to be pregnant, and in December 1778 she gave birth to her first child, Marie-Thérèse Charlotte, known as Madame Royale. Rumors spread widely, claiming the child might not be the king's, which further damaged the Queen's reputation. During her pregnancy, two events occurred that deeply influenced Marie Antoinette's life. Count Axel von Fersen, a Swedish nobleman and close friend, returned to Versailles, strengthening their personal bond. At the same time, her brother Joseph II became involved in a dispute over the Bavarian throne. Marie Antoinette urged her husband to support Austria diplomatically, which led to the Peace of Teschen in 1779. Although the treaty ended the conflict peacefully, it made the French public suspect that the Queen was favoring Austria over France. This belief would later fuel the image of her as a foreign traitor. Around this time, Marie Antoinette began to simplify royal fashion. She abandoned heavy makeup, powdered wigs, and the enormous dresses of earlier court fashion. Instead, she popularized lighter, more natural clothing, such as the robe à la polonaise and later the muslin gown known as the gaule. These new styles shocked the older nobles, but inspired imitation across Europe. In 1780, she began performing in small plays and musical shows at her private theater, the Théâtre de la Reine, built for her at Versailles. This gave her a sense of freedom, but also reinforced criticism that she was detached from the serious. France's financial troubles worsened, and the situation became more unstable when Marie Antoinette encouraged her husband to support the American Revolution against Britain. Although her motivations were partly political and partly driven by court rivalries, her support helped France form alliances with Austria and Russia, indirectly aiding the American cause. In 1780, she also supported the appointments of reform-minded ministers who strengthened France's military and naval forces, contributing to Britain's defeat in 1783. However, these political involvements made her appear manipulative and too powerful for a queen. The Queen suffered a miscarriage in 1779 and then gave birth to a son, Louis Joseph, in 1781. The death of her mother, Empress Maria Theresa, in 1780, left Marie Antoinette without her strongest advisor and protector. She worried that her brother might abandon the French alliance, but he reassured her that he would continue to support it. When Joseph visited France in 1781, rumors circulated that the Queen was secretly sending him money, further harming her reputation. Although the birth of the Dauphin brought joy to the royal family, the public increasingly saw Marie Antoinette as an Austrian influence within the French court. During the so-called Kettle War, she convinced France to compensate Austria financially, reinforcing the belief that she favored her homeland. Her decision in 1782 to appoint her close friend, the Duchess of Polignac, as governess of the royal children caused outrage. The Polignac family quickly grew wealthy and powerful under her protection, which angered the older nobility and the public, who saw this favoritism as yet another example of royal corruption. In 1783, Marie Antoinette again suffered a miscarriage, and later that year she helped appoint Charles-Alexandre de Calonne as finance minister and the Baron de Breteuil as minister of the royal household. These choices increased her influence in government, but also strengthened opposition to the monarchy. The rigid policies of the new ministers alienated the rising middle classes and deepened resentment toward the crown. Meanwhile, her friendship with Count Fersen continued to draw suspicion, and though most of their letters expressed deep emotional attachment rather than romance, the public and pamphleteers were eager to portray it as an affair. Scandalous pamphlets continued to circulate, depicting the Queen as immoral and promiscuous. They accused her of affairs with both men and women and mocked her luxurious lifestyle. This propaganda, mixed with growing anger over her Austrian origins, spread throughout France and destroyed her public image. In 1783, Marie Antoinette also commissioned the construction of her Hamlet at Versailles, a small rustic village designed for leisure and simplicity. Though similar retreats were fashionable among European nobles, the public viewed it as evidence of her frivolity. The Queen also continued to support the arts and sciences, including the first hot air balloon flight, and hosted small concerts with talented musicians such as the Chevalier de Saint-Georges. In 1784, with her support, Beaumarchais' play The Marriage of Figaro was performed publicly despite earlier censorship. The play criticized the nobility and was seen as an attack on the social order. Its popularity helped fuel revolutionary sentiment in France. That same year, Louis XVI purchased the Château de Saint-Cloud for Marie Antoinette, allowing her to own property in her own right. The cost, nearly 6 million livres, caused outrage among the public, who already viewed her as extravagant and indifferent to France's economic crisis. In 1785, Marie Antoinette gave birth to another son, Louis Charles, the Duke of Normandy. However, because the birth occurred shortly after Fersen's return from America, rumors claimed he was the real father. Although most historians agree the child was the king's, the gossip badly damaged the Queen's reputation. In 1786, she gave birth to her final child, Marie Sophie, who died the following year. By this time, the image of Marie Antoinette as a frivolous, wasteful, and unfaithful foreign queen had taken firm hold in the minds of the French people, setting the stage for her eventual downfall. Amid a flood of scandalous pamphlets, Emperor Joseph II of the Holy Roman Empire visited France in disguise as the Count of Falkenstein. He spent 6 weeks touring Paris and visited Versailles. On the 18th of April, 1777, he met Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette at the Château de la Muette and bluntly asked why their marriage was still unconsummated. He concluded there was no physical obstacle, only the Queen's lack of interest and the King's hesitation. In a letter to his brother Leopold, Joseph called them a pair of complete blunderers, and reported that Louis described his awkward, incomplete attempts at intimacy. Medical theories that Louis suffered from phimosis later proved false. After Joseph's intervention, the marriage was finally consummated in August 1777. 8 months later, the Queen was declared pregnant, and on 19 December 1778, she gave birth at Versailles to their daughter, Marie-Thérèse Charlotte, known as Madame Royale. Libellus pamphlets immediately questioned the child's paternity, as they later did for all the royal children. During the pregnancy, 2 events shaped Marie Antoinette's future. The Swedish diplomat, Count Axel von Fersen, returned to Versailles for a 2-year stay, strengthening a close friendship with the Queen. At the same time, her brother Joseph II pressed a claim to the Bavarian throne, opposed by Saxony and Prussia. Marie Antoinette urged Louis XVI to support Austria. The Peace of Teschen, signed on 13th May 1779, ended the short conflict with French mediation and awarded Austria the Innviertel region. This outcome, seen as favoring Austria, fed the idea that the Queen put her native land's interests before France's. At court, Marie Antoinette began changing customs and styles. She abandoned heavy makeup and wide hoop skirts, first popularizing the rustic robe à la polonaise and later the light muslin gaule, famously worn in a 1783 portrait by Vigée Lebrun. In 1780, she started acting in private plays and musical performances at the Théâtre de la Reine, built for her by Richard Mies. France's debt remained severe, and the situation worsened as Marie Antoinette pushed Louis toward aiding the American Revolution. Although driven as much by court factions as by policy, she helped secure Austrian and Russian diplomatic support for France and backed key appointments in 1780, Philippe Henri, Marquis de Ségur as War Minister, and Charles-Eugène Gabriel de la Croix as Navy Secretary, strengthening the French war effort that helped George Washington defeat Britain in 1783. The Queen likely miscarried in July 1779, though some historians think she mistook irregular bleeding for a lost pregnancy. A new pregnancy was confirmed in March 1781, and on 22 October she gave birth to a son, Louis Joseph, the Dauphin of France. Empress Maria Theresa died on 29 November 1780, leaving Marie Antoinette anxious about the Franco-Austrian alliance and her own position. Joseph II reassured her that he would maintain the alliance. When he visited again in July 1781, rumors claimed the Queen was secretly sending him money from the French treasury, further harming her reputation. After the Dauphin's birth, many believed the Queen's political sway chiefly served Austria. During the Kettle War, when Joseph II tried to open the Scheldt River to navigation, she pressed Vergennes to grant Austria large financial compensation. She also secured Joseph's support against Britain and reduced French hostility to his Russian alliance. In 1782, when the governess of the royal children resigned after bankruptcy, Marie Antoinette appointed her intimate friend, the Duchess of Polignac, to the post. The appointment angered the court, which considered the Duchess too modest in birth for so high a role. The Polignac family's rapid rise in titles, wealth, and influence fueled resentment among nobles and the public, especially in Paris, and deepened hostility toward the Queen. In June 1783, the Queen's new pregnancy was announced, but she miscarried on the night of the 1st to the 2nd of November, her 28th birthday. That year she strongly supported Charles-Alexandre de Calonne as Controller General of Finances and Baron de Breteuil as Minister of the Royal Household. Her influence peaked as these men blocked structural reform of the old regime. A decree by War Minister de Ségur requiring 4 generations of nobility for army officer commissions alienated the professional classes and newer nobles, turning long, loyal groups against the monarchy and sowing seeds for the revolution's early leadership. Count Fersen returned from America in June 1783 and was welcomed into the Queen's private circle. Rumors of a love affair spread, but surviving correspondence, partly deciphered by modern analysis, shows intense emotional attachment without proving a physical relationship. Pamphlets portraying the Queen's sexual misconduct multiplied, mixing moral outrage with anti-Austrian sentiment. One early collection, the Portefeuille d'un Talon Rouge, mocked many nobles and soon focused on Marie Antoinette, accusing her of affairs with men and women and branding her supposed female relationships as the German vice. In 1783, she commissioned her Hamlet, a picturesque rustic retreat at Versailles, designed by Richard Meek after paintings by Hubert Robert. Its cost caused uproar, though such model villages were fashionable among nobles, and hers was smaller than many. Around this time, she assembled a 5,000-volume library, read history, and sponsored music. She hosted intimate music halls at Versailles and the Petit Trianon, with musicians such as the Chevalier de Saint-Georges, and supported scientific feats like the first Montgolfière hot air balloon launch by Jean-François Pilatre de Rosier. On 27 April 1784, Beaumarchais' play The Marriage of Figaro finally premiered in Paris with the Queen's backing after earlier bans. Its scathing view of the nobility hurt the monarchy's public image and inspired Mozart's opera of the same name, premiered in Vienna on the 1st of May, 1786. That October, Louis XVI purchased the Château de Saint-Cloud for Marie Antoinette so she could own property in her own right and bequeath it to whichever child she chose. The nearly 6 million livre price and additional redecorating costs outraged critics who already saw her as extravagant while the nation was deep in debt. On 27 March 1785, she gave birth to a second son, Louis Charles, Duke of Normandy. Because the birth came 9 months after Fersen's return, rumors challenged his paternity, though most historians and court diaries agree Louis XVI was the father. The slander nonetheless entrenched the image of a frivolous, unfaithful, spendthrift foreign queen. Her last child, Marie Sophie, was born on the 9th of July, 1786, and died the following year. By 1786, shaken by the diamond necklace scandal, Marie Antoinette shifted from leisure to politics. She publicly emphasized her children's care and education to counter the dissolute image attached to her after pamphleteers falsely linked her to the necklace fraud. The chief figures in the affair were Cardinal de Rohan and Jeanne de Valois Saint-Remy, Countess de la Motte, who tricked the cardinal into purchasing the necklace as a supposed gift for the queen. When the plot collapsed, the culprits were arrested, tried, and punished, except those who fled. Rohan was acquitted by the Parlement of Paris, while La Motte was imprisoned for life. Although the guilty were condemned, the Queen's insistence on Rohan's arrest backfired, further damaging her reputation and the monarchy's prestige. As France's finances worsened, Louis XVI, suffering from depression, began seeking his wife's advice. The Queen tried to ease tensions between the Parlement and the Crown, and the Polignac's influence waned. With state credit collapsing, Louis, Marie Antoinette, and Finance Minister Calonne, encouraged by Vergennes, summoned an assembly of notables for the first time in 160 years to consider reforms. It convened on 22 February 1787, days after Vergennes died, and it refused to approve changes. The Queen's absence drew accusations she was sabotaging the effort. On her urging, Louis dismissed Calonne on the 8th of April. Étienne Charles de Lomenie de Brienne, Archbishop of Toulouse and her ally, replaced Calonne as finance chief and then as chief minister. He cut court expenses and tried to restore royal authority against the Parlement, but failed to fix the finances. The notables were dissolved on the 25th of May, and the Queen was blamed for the impasse. France's fiscal crisis stemmed from costly wars, a large royal household funded by the state, and privileged elites resisting tax reforms. In the summer of 1787, the public branded the Queen Madame Deficit, blaming her for national bankruptcy. While not solely responsible, she had helped oust reforming ministers like Turgot in 1776 and Necker in 1781, and her secret expenditures pushed court costs above official estimates. To repair her image, she used propaganda showing her as a devoted mother, most famously Vigée Lebrun's 1787 portrait with her children, displayed at the Salon. That same year, Jeanne de la Motte escaped to London and published slanders claiming an affair with the Queen. Politics worsened when, at the Queen's urging, the Parlement of Paris was exiled to Troyes on the 15th of August, 1787. Louis tried to force laws through with a lit de justice on November 11th. The Duke of Orléans protested, and was exiled. The May Edicts of 1788 provoked further outrage. On August 8th, Louis announced the Estates General would be summoned for the first time since 1614. From late 1787 until his death in June 1789, the Queen's main private worry was the Dauphin's deteriorating health from tuberculosis. Publicly, she drove major decisions, exiling the Parlement, backing the May Edicts, and supporting the Estates General. She sat in the King's Council, the first queen to do so in over 175 years, and steered policy behind the scenes. She helped restore Necker as finance minister on the 26th of August 1788, a popular move despite her doubts. She also accepted doubling the representation of the Third Estate to curb aristocratic power. At the Estates General opening in May 1789, tensions exploded between the reformist Third Estate and the conservative nobility. The Queen knew her rival, the Duke of Orléans, had won public favor by distributing food, hurting her standing. The death of the Dauphin on the 4th of June devastated the royal couple, but drew little sympathy as the nation focused on bread shortages and political crisis. As the Third Estate declared itself the National Assembly, and rumors spread that the Queen wished to massacre the people, she entered mourning and pressed Louis to hold firm and resist reform, even considering force to crush the movement. On the 20th of June, the Third Estate, joined by sympathetic clergy and nobles, found their hall closed and swore the tennis court oath to draft a constitution. On the 11th of July, at the Queen's urging, Necker was dismissed and replaced by Breteuil, who planned to use Swiss mercenaries under Baron de Besenval to restore order. Paris erupted, leading to the storming of the Bastille on the 14th of July. Lafayette was appointed commander of the National Guard the next day. By royal order and fearing for their lives, leading nobles fled beginning July 17th, including the king's brother, the Count of Artois, the Condé princes, and the Polignac family. The Queen stayed with Louis as the Assembly stripped the crown of power. On 4th August, the Assembly abolished feudal privileges, and on 26th August, adopted the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, paving the way for a constitutional monarchy. As bread prices spiked, a crowd marched from Paris to Versailles on the 5th of October and forced the royal family to move to the Tuileries Palace in Paris under National Guard supervision. Marie Antoinette continued charity and religious duties, but focused on her children. Politically, she dealt with key figures such as Necker, whom she blamed for feeding the revolution. Lafayette, who despised her and once threatened to send her to a convent, acted as the family's warden, but cooperated at the mayor's urging and even allowed her to see Fersen. He exiled the Duke of Orléans at her urging. Rumors accused her of an affair with Lafayette, part of a wave of defamation that later peaked with charges of incest at her trial. Claims without evidence. One of her shrewdest moves was reaching a secret understanding with Mirabeau, the Assembly's most influential lawmaker. A liberal aristocrat, he sought to reconcile monarchy and revolution and wanted ministerial power. Guided by Mercy Argenteau, she met him privately at Saint-Cloud on the 3rd of July, 1790. Impressed, Mirabeau wrote that she was the only strong figure near the king. In return for a monthly stipend and a large bonus if successful, he worked to restore royal authority, winning the king a suspensive veto and influence over foreign policy. He even suggested the court withdraw to Rouen or Compiègne. His death in April 1791 ended this fragile leverage. Meanwhile, the civil constitution of the clergy, reluctantly signed by Louis, reorganized the church, cutting bishops and subjecting clergy to local elections, while weakening papal authority. Pope Pius VI condemned it in March 1791. Devout and devoted to divine right monarchy, the king and queen saw the measure as an attack on religion and crown. On the 18th of April, as the royal family tried to leave Paris for Saint-Cloud to attend Easter Mass by a non-oath-taking priest, a crowd, joined by National Guards defying Lafayette, blocked their way. The Queen told Lafayette they were no longer free. Determined to flee with her family and counting on foreign aid, she entrusted Fersen and Breteuil with an escape plan, while she quietly courted moderate revolutionaries. On the night of 21st June, 1791, they attempted the flight to Varennes, posing as the entourage of a wealthy Russian baroness played by the children's governess. Delays and poor execution doomed the effort. The family was recognized, arrested at Varennes less than a day later, and brought back to Paris. The fiasco shattered remaining support for the king. Assembly delegates Barnave, Pétion, and Latour-Maubourg escorted the family. Barnave shielded the queen from insults. Thanks to him, the couple avoided trial and were publicly cleared of legal guilt. According to her lady-in-waiting, the queen's hair turned white overnight from shock. After Varennes, surveillance at the Tuileries tightened. Guards accompanied the queen everywhere, and her bedroom door stayed open at night. Her health declined. On July 17, 1791, Lafayette's National Guard fired on a crowd at the Champ de Mars, demanding the king's deposition, killing dozens. His reputation never recovered. In October, he resigned, and the Queen helped block his bid to become Paris's mayor. Barnave still risked his career to support the Queen, securing a moderate majority ready to work with her. But many doubted her sincerity, and radicals exploited the belief that she controlled the king. As the months passed, she pinned her hopes on a European coalition, especially Austria, deterring violence. She wrote that the mere approach of war would restore the king's powers and bring exiled princes home. After Leopold II died in 1792, his son Francis II took a harder line against revolutionary France. Austria's firm stance led France to declare war on the 20th of April, 1792. The Queen, suspected of aiding Austria, became an open enemy in the public eye. French battlefield losses mounted, and she was accused of passing military secrets to Austria. Urging Louis to veto laws limiting his power, the pair were mocked as Monsieur Veto and Madame Veto. Barnave's moderates lost ground. The Girondins took control, passed anti-aristocratic and church measures, and were vetoed by the king. Dumouriez, the foreign minister, tried to save the monarchy, but the Queen rejected his overtures. Her refusal to work with the Girondins led them to denounce Austrian treason, pointing directly at the Queen. After Madame Roland sent a scathing letter blaming her, Louis dismissed the ministry, losing his majority and prompting Dumouriez to resign. The declaration of Pillnitz, threatening intervention, had already inflamed tensions. France's war in 1792 pushed events toward the August insurrection that toppled the throne. On the 20th of June, 1792, a furious crowd stormed the Tuileries, forced the king to don the red cap of liberty, hurled insults at the Queen for betraying France, and threatened her life. She urged Fersen to secure a foreign invasion and a stern warning to protect the royal family. The Brunswick Manifesto of 25th July, threatening Paris with destruction if harm came to them, triggered the 10th August uprising. The royal family fled to the Legislative Assembly as the palace was overrun and the Swiss guards slaughtered. On 13th August, they were imprisoned in the Temple Tower under harsher conditions. Soon after, royal attendants were seized. the Princess de Lamballe was taken to La Force prison, hastily judged, and brutally murdered on the 3rd of September. Her head was paraded on a pike towards the temple. The Queen fainted when told. On 21st September 1792, France was declared a republic, the monarchy abolished, and the royal family reduced to the name Capets. Preparations began for Louis XVI's trial. Separated from his family, he was tried for treason in December, convicted, and, by a margin of 6 votes, sentenced to death. He was executed by guillotine on the 21st of January 1793. After Louis XVI's execution, the former queen, now called Widow Capet, went into deep mourning. She still hoped her son, Louis Charles, whom the exiled Count of Provence recognized as the new king, would one day rule France. Royalists and non-juring clergy, including rebels preparing the Vendée uprising, backed her and the return of the monarchy. Wealthy supporters tried to bribe officials and arrange escapes, but every plot failed. In the temple prison, guards mocked her, sometimes blowing smoke in her face. Strict rules tried to cut off all contact with the outside, yet a few guards took bribes and messages still found their way in and out. Debate over her fate divided the National Convention. Some deputies wanted her executed. Others suggested exchanging her for French prisoners of war or ransoming her to the Holy Roman Emperor. Thomas Paine argued she should be sent into exile in America. In April 1793, during the Reign of Terror, the Committee of Public Safety was formed under Maximilien Robespierre, and radicals such as Jacques Hébert demanded the Queen's trial. By late May, the Girondins had been driven from power. At the same time, revolutionaries moved to re-educate the 8-year-old Louis Charles. On the 3rd of July, officials tore him from his mother after a struggle and handed him to Antoine Simon, a cobbler acting for the Paris Commune. From then until her removal, Marie Antoinette tried for hours each day to catch sight of her son, who within weeks was coerced into accusing her of crimes. At 1 in the morning on the 1st of August, she was moved from the temple to the conciergerie and registered as prisoner number 280. As she left the tower, she struck her head on a door lintel. When a guard asked if she was hurt, she answered that nothing could hurt her anymore. This was the harshest phase of her captivity. She lived under constant watch with no privacy. A late August escape plan, known as the Carnation Plot, fell apart because not all the guards could be bribed. A servant, Rosalie Lamorlière, did what she could to care for her, and at least one Catholic priest managed to visit her. Her trial opened before the Revolutionary Tribunal on the 14th of October 1793. Many historians believe the verdict had already been set by the Committee of Public Safety once the escape plot was uncovered. She and her lawyers had less than a day to prepare. The charges repeated long-standing slanders, staging orgies at Versailles, sending huge sums to Austria, plotting the 1792 massacre of National Guards, declaring her son king, and incest, an accusation extracted from Louis Charles under pressure by Hébert. When pressed on the incest charge, she refused on principle and appealed to the mothers in the courtroom, whose reaction briefly softened the hostile crowd. At dawn on the 16th of October, she was found guilty of draining the treasury, conspiring against the nation's security, and committing high treason by passing intelligence to France's enemies. The treason count alone meant death. She had expected life imprisonment at worst. In her final hours, she wrote a letter to her sister-in-law, Madame Elizabeth, affirming her clear conscience, her Catholic faith, and her love for her children, but the letter never reached its recipient and was later found among Robespierre's papers. Forced to change clothes in front of guards, She asked to wear black, but was made to put on a plain white dress, the color of royal widows. Her hair was cut, her hands tied tightly behind her back, and a rope was put around her. Unlike her husband, who rode to his death in a carriage, she was placed in an open cart for the hour-long ride from the conciergerie along the Rue Saint-Honoré to the guillotine at the Place de la Révolution, where she ignored the priest assigned to her because he had sworn loyalty to the Republic. She remained calm, despite taunts from the crowd. At 12:15 p.m. on the 16th of October, 1793, she was beheaded. Her last words, after stepping on the executioner's foot, were an apology. A death mask was made by Marie Tussaud. Her body was buried in an unmarked grave in the nearby Madeleine Cemetery, which soon filled and closed. Abroad, reactions were fierce and divided. Some used her as a scapegoat for the revolution's violence. Others mourned her as a victim. Thomas Jefferson later blamed her spending, stubbornness, and spirit for hastening events, and even claimed that without a queen, there would have been no revolution. Edmund Burke had earlier lamented the passing of the age of chivalry, seeing her downfall as a sign of Europe's decline. Her sister Maria Carolina, Queen of Naples, went into deep mourning, cracked down on reformers, empowered bishops, and supported French émigrés. During the Bourbon Restoration, her remains and those of Louis XVI were exhumed on the 18th of January, 1815. On the 21st of January, they received Christian burial in the royal necropolis at the Basilica of Saint-Denis. To revolutionaries, she came to personify the failures of the old regime. The tribunal laid much of France's financial crisis at her feet, and her foreign birth and continued contact with Austria labeled her a traitor in a nation redefining loyalty. Many French people viewed her death as necessary to complete the revolution. Beyond politics, she left a lasting mark as a patron of art and design. Commissions from masters such as Jean-Henri Riesener show her taste and her desire for private comfort away from Versailles protocol, as seen in pieces moved to the Petit Trianon. She owned several musical instruments, and in 1788 purchased a piano by Sébastien Érard. A catalogue of 736 books from her Petit Trianon library, published in 1863, reveals shelves filled with novels and plays. A larger, official collection stood at the Tuileries. Long after her death, Marie Antoinette remains a powerful cultural figure tied to conservatism, Catholicism, wealth, and fashion. She has inspired countless books and films. Politically minded writers have cast her as the emblem of class conflict, aristocracy, and absolutism, while others continue to debate how much she truly shaped the events that ended the French monarchy.